Today I'm going to be showing you how to arm knit the rib stitch as well as how to make a striped blanket. It's all going to be combined into one blanket pattern, the rib stitch as well as the stripes. I'm going to be using Couture Jazz yarn from Premier Yarns. This is the wrapper, and you can purchase this on premieryarns.com. To do the stripes, I have about four colors here. I have the color tan, milk, denim, and mist. And I'm going to try to incorporate all of them into this blanket. We'll see how it turns out. I'm going to start off using the color milk. And the first thing we're going to do for arm knitting and casting on, I like to do the long tail cast on method. It gives you a more secure, tight edge rather than a loose edge. So to do that, you're going to need a long tail. And for this blanket, I'm going to cast on 18 stitches. So we're going to need about 4 feet of tail. And then at that 4 foot mark, you're going to drape the yarn over your hand, insert your thumb, so you're draping the yarn over all of your fingers. You're going to pinch the two ends together, twist it away from you, and you're going to grab that strand that's attached to the skein of yarn, which is the working yarn. So you're going to grab the working yarn and pull that up through the loop. So this gives you a slip knot. And you're going to go ahead and place that slip knot onto your right arm and tighten it up. Now you don't want to tighten it too much because you're going to want to slide this about halfway up your arm because we're going to be casting on 18 stitches and you're going to need this room here for those 18 stitches. So we made our slip knot, which counts as our first stitch. And the next thing we're going to do is cast on the other 17 stitches. Now to do this, you want to take the working yarn as I showed you and the tail, and you're going to place them both underneath your ring finger and your pinky with the palm of your hand facing you. And you're going to take your index finger and your thumb and you're going to insert it in between the tail and the working yarn, while still holding those pieces there underneath your ring finger and pinky. Insert your index and thumb and turn your palm towards you again. The next thing you're going to do is take your index finger on your right hand and you're going to go under this strand, over this one, and you're going to pick up this one in the back. So to do that, you want to take your index finger, go under this one, okay, over the one in the middle, so you're going to go over this one. So under, over, and we're going to grab that one in the back and pick it up and pull it up. And that there is your second stitch, this loop right here. So we're going to go ahead and place that onto our right hand. Okay. And then pull on the tail a little bit to tighten that up. You don't want to make it too tight because you want to be able to move it up your arm. So that is 2 stitches. We're going to do that 16 more times. So again, place the tail and the working yarn underneath your ring finger and your pinky. Insert your index finger and your thumb in between the 2 strands, making sure that the tail is the one that's wrapped around your thumb. Turn your palm towards you, and you're going to take your index finger in your right hand and go under, over, and pick up the one in the back. So under, over, and pick up the one all the way in the back and pull it up to create a new stitch. Place that new stitch onto your right hand. So that's 3 stitches. And let's do that again. So again, place the 2 strands underneath your ring finger and your pinky. Insert your index finger and your thumb. And turn the palm of your hand towards you. You're going to go under, over, and pick up the one in the back. So under, over the one in the middle, and grab the one in the back and pick it up. And that creates a new stitch, and you can just place that right onto your right arm or hand. So we have our 18 stitches, and you want to make sure that your tail is about a foot long. That way you can knot it and weave it in at the end. That way it doesn't come undone, and I'll show you how to do that at the end of the video. I'm going to show you how to do the rib stitch today, which consists of knitting and purling stitches. Normally we just do the knit stitch, but today we're going to knit and purl our stitches. To knit stitches, you're going to want the yarn in the front of your work, like we normally do with our arm knit projects. And to purl the stitches, you're going to pick up the skein of yarn, lift it over your work, set it on your lap so that the working yarn is in the back of your work. And I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to show you how to purl a stitch first, because what we're going to do is purl the first two, knit the next two, purl the next two, and so on. So we're going to purl two, knit two across the entire row. To purl a stitch, you're going to hold the working yarn in your right hand just as you would do with knitting. You're going to take that first stitch, pull it over and off of your right hand while still holding onto the working yarn. And you're going to take that stitch and place it onto your left hand just as you would normally do with arm knitting. Now, the difference between knitting and purling is you're going to take that working yarn and pull it towards you rather than away from you to tighten it. So just pull it towards you and tighten up that first stitch with the working yarn closer to you in the back, okay? So see how the working yarn is in the back of our work, closer to us, rather than being on the other side, farther away from us. So now we're going to hold it in the back with our right hand, take the next stitch and purl it. To do that, you want to pull it over and off of your hand, over the working yarn. So you have this new stitch here, and you're going to place that right onto your left arm. And see how the working yarn is still in the back of our work, closer to us. So we're just going to tighten up that stitch. And you don't want to make these too tight because you're going to have to move them up your arm as you go and as you knit your stitches. So move them up a little bit. Okay, so we have 2 purl stitches, and now we're going to do 2 knit stitches. To do that, we have to move our working yarn from the back to the front of our work. So we're going to pick up the skein of yarn. Okay, mine's a little unraveled, but that's okay. We're going to flip it over to the front and set it back on the floor. So now the working yarn is in the front of our work. To knit the next 2 stitches, you're going to hold the working yarn in your right hand, take that third stitch on your right arm and pull it over and off while still holding the working yarn. So you have your new stitch here, and you're going to place that onto your left arm. Tighten it up a little bit and do the same thing to the next stitch. Take the 4th stitch, pull it over and off while still holding the working yarn in your right hand. And now you have this new stitch, and you're going to place it onto your left arm. Tighten it up a little bit. So now you have 2 purl stitches and 2 knit stitches, and we're going to go back to 2 purl stitches now. So you want to pick up the skein of yarn and flip it over your work and put it into your lap so that the working yarn is in the back of your work. So now I have my skein in my lap and the working yarn in the back of my work. We're going to purl our next 2 stitches. And we're going to do the same thing we did to the first 2. So hold the working yarn in your right hand, take the next stitch, pull it over and off. You have your new stitch, place it onto your left arm. Tighten it up. Again, take that next stitch, pull it over and off, creating a new stitch, and place it onto your left arm. And now we're going to do 2 knit stitches. So take all of your skein of yarn, flip it over to the front, and place it onto the floor. And knit the next 2 stitches. So hold the working yarn in your right hand, pull that next stitch over and off of your right hand. You have a new stitch and place that onto your left arm. Tighten it up, and again, over and off, place it onto your left arm, tighten it up. So there we have 2 knit stitches, and now we need to do 2 purl stitches. So to do that, we have to lift our skein and put it on our lap so that the working yarn is in the back of the work closer to us, and purl the next 2 stitches. Purl, and tighten, purl, and tighten. And you can go ahead and move the yarn for all the stitches of your arm as you go. It'll get a little bunched up, but that's fine. So the next 2 stitches you have to do are knit stitches. So we're gonna flip our yarn to the front, set it on the floor, and knit our next 2 stitches. And you're just gonna continue to do this knit 2, purl 2 across the entire row. So that was knit 2, and now I'm gonna purl 2. And now we're going to knit 2, so flip it to the front. And you could have a table in front of you to set the yarn on rather than putting it on the floor if you'd like. So that was knit 2 stitches, and now we're gonna purl our last 2 stitches. So pick up your skein of yarn and flip it to the back and purl. That was our first row, and I know it doesn't look like much, but in the end, this blanket will be about 4 or 5 feet long, and you'll see the rib stitch as we go. I'm going to do one more row using this milk color, and then we'll switch to a different color after that. But for now, we're going to continue with our purl 2 and knit 2. You want to make sure you purl all of your purl stitches and knit all of your knit stitches. So to start this next row, you're going to hold the working yarn in your left hand, take that first stitch and pull it over and off, creating a new stitch again, and place that onto your right arm this time. So we're just taking all of the stitches and moving them, knitting them over to our right arm. And remember, for purling, you want to pick up that working yarn and make sure it's in the back, and you want to tighten it up that way. So the working yarn is in the back of our work closer to us, and we're going to purl the next stitch. So pull that next stitch over and off of your left hand, creating a new stitch with the working yarn, and you're going to just place that right onto your right arm. Tighten it up, and you want to knit the next 2 stitches. So we're going to pick up our skein of yarn, flip it over to the front of our work and set it back down. Now the working yarn is in the front of our work, so we're going to knit our next 2 stitches. Hold the working yarn in your left hand, take that next stitch and pull it over and off, creating a new stitch, and now we're going to place that onto our right arm. And again, knit the next stitch, creating a new stitch, and place that onto your right arm. And now we're going to purl 2 stitches. So we need to pick up our working yarn, or our skein of yarn, flip it to the back, and set it back down. So now the working yarn is in the back of our work, and you're going to purl 2 stitches. And we're going to continue doing the knit 2, purl 2, or purl 2, knit 2 across the entire row. I'm going to switch to a different color now. So what I'm going to do to switch to a different color is cut the working yarn about 2 to 3 inches away from my hand. And we're just going to cut the working yarn. we're going to set this milk colored yarn aside and we're going to pick our new color. I think I'm going to go ahead and go with this mist color and pull out the strand either from the center or the outside of the skein, whichever you prefer. And we're going to tie just a basic knot with the 2 strands. I'm going to do a double knot just to make it a little more secure. And you want to make sure you tie it really tight. So really tight, and then a double knot. Tighten it up. And then we're going to trim the excess yarn. What I'm going to do is cut it kind of like contoured to the knot. So a little bit of a rounded edge, and you can always go back and trim it up later. And we're going to start working on our next row with our second color. So this is going to be our 3rd row. To knit the 3rd row, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to purl 2, knit 2 across the entire row, starting with 2 purl stitches. So to purl the 2 first stitches, you want to hold the new color of yarn in your right hand. Take that first stitch and pull it over and off, creating this new loop with the new color. And you're going to place that onto your left arm. Remember to grab the working yarn and pull it to the back of your work for the first 2 stitches to create 2 purl stitches. And tighten it up. And now we're going to purl the next stitch. So over and off, create a new stitch and place that onto your left arm and tighten it up. And now we want to knit 2 stitches, so pick up your skein of yarn off of your lap and flip it to the front of your work. So now the working yarn is in the front of your work. So knit the next 2 stitches, tighten it up, knit and tighten it up. Now we're going to purl 2 stitches. So pick up the skein of yarn and flip it to the back and purl 2 stitches. Okay, so that was our first row with the second color, and we're going to go ahead and do another row with the mist color. Again, doing the purl 2, knit 2, moving all the stitches from our left arm to our right arm. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the cream color. So I'm going to cut the working yarn again, just a couple of inches away from my hand. And we're going to set the mist color aside, and I'm going to go back to cream. So I have another skein here of the cream. This is probably about a half a skein actually. And we're going to tie the 2 ends together with a double knot, just like we did the last time. And we'll clean up those knots after. So now we're going to knit with the cream color again. So we have to purl 2. So remember to keep the working yarn in the back. And knit 2. Just the same as the rows before. Purl 2. This is what we have so far, and I'm going to do another row of the cream color. So we'll start with 2 pearls. Okay, so that worked out, so I had just enough to finish that row in the milk color, and now I'm going to switch to the tan color. So I have a big skein of tan here, and we're just going to tie on the new color as close as we can to our hand. And we're going to continue knitting with our 3rd color now, and starting with the purling 2 and then knitting 2. And now we're going to purl our last 2 stitches with the tan color. Okay, and just pull on this every now and then, kind of unbunch it a little bit. Alright, and now we're going to continue knitting with the tan. So purl 2, so I believe that was 4 or 5 rows of the tan color, and I'm going to go ahead and keep going with the tan. And it looks like I'm about to run out of the tan, so I'm going to go ahead and add on another skein of tan. So just tying a double knot. I want to make sure it's in the back of my work. Cut the excess. And keep knitting. And I'm going to continue with the tan color. Purl 2. Knit 2. Okay, so now I'm going to switch back to the mist color. So I'm going to cut the working yarn, and we're going to continue knitting, but with the mist color. I'm going to do 2 rows, so purl 2. I'm just kind of making this color pattern up as I go. About to run out of the mist color, so I'm going to add on another skein. This is my last skein of mist. Alright, so that was 2 rows of the blue. I'm going to cut that, and we're going to add on, I think I'm going to go with the milk color, the cream. So set the mist aside, and we'll go with a couple of rows of cream. So I have a skein here. We'll tie this on as close as we can to our hand. Alright, so now we're going to knit with the cream, but I wanted to show you what we have so far. So we have 2 rows of the blue. We have about, I want to say that's 5 or 6 rows of tan. 2 to 3 rows of the cream, 2 rows of blue, and a few rows of the cream. So that's what we have so far. I'd say it's about 2 to 3 feet long, maybe 3 feet. And we're just gonna continue knitting. This will be about the size of a lap blanket when I'm done. I have about 2 skeins of tan and a skein of blue left, plus this cream color that I'm using now. So I'm gonna keep going with the cream color, until I've just about run out. So we're going to go on to our third row with the cream. And now we're going to do the fourth row using the cream color. So let's keep going onto our fifth row with the cream yarn. And now we're going to move on to our next color. And I'm going to go ahead and do a small row of tan. Just do 2 rows of that. So we're going to cut our cream color, the color Milk, and we're going to attach the tan. With a double knot. And we're going to knit a couple of rows with the tan color. Okay, and we only have about 1.5 feet left there. So we're going to cut that just a couple inches away. Put that tan color aside, and I'm going to do a couple of rows of the mist color and continue knitting the Purl to Knit To pattern. Now I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the tan color. I'm going to do a few rows of the tan, and then we're going to end our blanket with probably just 1 row of the blue mist. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I believe it was 4 rows of the tan, and now we're going to do our last row, which is the bind off row. And I'll show you how to bind off, but I'm going to do it with the mist color. So I've already tied on my mist yarn, and we're going to go ahead and bind off. So to do that, you want to knit 2 stitches, and with this row you don't have to worry about knitting or purling back and forth. You can just knit all the stitches if you want, or purl all of them. So we're going to knit 2 stitches over to our right arm. And you don't want to do the bind off row too tight, because then you'll have one skinny end to your blanket. So just keep it a little bit loose. And we're going to take, after we've knit our 2 stitches, we're going to take the first stitch and we're going to pull it over the second one and off of our hand and drop it. And we're just going to tighten it a little bit. You're going to knit 1 more stitch. And then again, you're going to take that first stitch and pull it over the second one and off of your hand. Tighten it just a little bit. Okay. And you're going to knit 1 more stitch. And you're going to bind off 1 stitch. So pull that first stitch over the second and off of your hand. And we're going to knit another one. And you're going to bind 1 off. Knit 1. Bind 1 off, knit 1, bind 1 off, and you're going to do that across the entire row. So you can see here that it's ending your blanket. Knit 1, bind 1 off, knit 1, bind 1 off, now we're going to bind off our last stitch. So knit it, bind it off, tighten that up a little bit, and now we're going to go ahead and cut the working yarn, leaving about 1 foot of tail. And now with this last loop on our arm, we're just gonna go ahead and pull that tail all the way through and pull it tight to create a knot. Okay, here you can see we have the end of our blanket that we did in the mist color. And now I'm going to show you how I like to weave in the ends of my blanket so that it doesn't come undone. So with the cast on edge, I'm just going to kind of stretch it out a little bit, that way it's not bunched up. And you have the first tail of yarn from when you cast on. So I'm just gonna create another knot here, because if you keep pulling on that, it'll just keep pulling and it won't tighten. So I'm just gonna make a knot by making a loop, making another loop, and then pulling that tail all the way through. Push down on that knot as hard as you can until it doesn't tighten anymore. So now you have a nice secure knot. And now what we're gonna do is weave in this tail. Instead of just cutting it, I like to weave it into the inside of the blanket. So we're gonna go on the inside of the blanket here, which would be the wrong side of the blanket. And I'm just gonna kind of pull it through the stitches. So I'm gonna go through here, and then I'm gonna go under this here. And when I pull it through this one, I'm only going to pull it halfway through to create a loop. I'm going to grab the tail, and it's kind of a short piece, but we're going to try to pull it halfway through again. Okay, and then we're going to grab the tail again and pull it all the way through. Push on that knot there to create a tight knot. And now from the other side, see how you can't see where you were weaving it in? So now you can cut it, and you can be sure that it won't come undone. Okay. And now we're gonna go to the other end of our blanket and do the same thing. And with this one, we already created a tight knot. So I'm just gonna flip it over here, put it underneath this blue strand. So then we're gonna go ahead and go under this loop here, but only halfway. So we've created this new loop there, and we're going to pull that tail through halfway again. And then we're gonna grab the tail and pull it all the way through, pushing up on that knot hard as you can to create a tight knot, and then we're going to trim the excess. Then what I would recommend doing is going around your blanket and just finding any knots that you made throughout when you switched colors. And here's one here on the edge, and what I like to do is just kind of clean it up. You can cut it kind of close and kind of shape it to the knot. So that will blend a little bit better. And just do that to all the knots that you made. I'm going to go ahead and put the links to where you can find this yarn down below in the description box. And also I'm going to put a link to my blog where you can find pictures of the finished product, but let me show you here what we have real quick. So this is the finished blanket, and it's going from my feet to my shoulders without stretching it. And you can see here the detail in the rib stitch. So these are the knit stitches, and then the ones that are kind of inset are the purl stitch. So if you were to stretch this blanket out, it would be about 3 feet wide. But that's that. So head to my blog to see more pictures of the finished blanket. I will put all of the links down below, but it's simplymaggie.com, and I'll have pictures and the pattern and anything else you'll need to create this arm knit striped blanket. Calvin. Calvin.